Marco Santos stood in a glass conference room on the 20th floor of Paramount Studios in Los Angeles. Outside, palm trees swayed against a perfect blue sky. Inside, 3 executives sat across from him, their faces blank as stone. He had just finished his pitch. 15 minutes of passion poured into explaining his film concept, a story about a Filipino family navigating identity, loss, and hope across 3 generations in Manila and America. The senior executive, Richard Brennan, leaned back in his leather chair. He didn't even look at Marco's treatment document. "Let me be direct with you," Brennan said, his voice cold and measured. "This is not what American audiences want to see. Filipino stories? There's no market for it. No bankable stars, no proven track record." Marco felt his chest tighten, but he kept his voice steady. "Sir, with respect, this story is universal. Family, sacrifice, identity, these themes cross every border." Brennan waved his hand dismissively. "Universal? Look, we've been in this business for decades. We know what sells. And this?" He tapped Marco's script with one finger. "This doesn't sell. Go make your little film somewhere else. Maybe try YouTube." The other executives smirked. One of them muttered something about diversity checkboxes. Marco gathered his materials slowly, deliberately. He looked Brennan directly in the eye. "One day," Marco said quietly, "you're going to remember this meeting." Brennan laughed. "Sure, kid. Good luck with that." Marco walked out of that building with his script under his arm and his heart pounding with a mixture of humiliation and determination. He had flown from Manila to Los Angeles using savings from 3 years of freelance work. He had believed this meeting would change his life. It did, just not in the way anyone expected. Back in Manila, Marco returned to his small apartment in Quezon City. His family asked how the meeting went. He smiled and said, "It was a learning experience." He couldn't afford to try Hollywood again. So he made a decision that seemed insane to everyone around him. He would make the film himself. With what money? With what crew? With what equipment? Marco started small. He sold his car. He moved back in with his parents. He worked 3 jobs, teaching film at a local college in the morning, editing corporate videos in the afternoon, and shooting weddings on weekends. Every peso he earned went into a production fund. His friends thought he had lost his mind. His relatives whispered that he was wasting his life chasing an impossible dream. But Marco had something that rejection couldn't kill, a story that needed to be told, and the stubborn Filipino resilience his grandmother had always talked about. She used to say, "Ang taong nagigipit, sa patalim kumakapit." A person in dire straits will cling even to a blade. Marco was clinging to his vision, even if it cut him. He assembled a crew of film school graduates who believed in the project more than the paycheck, because there was barely any paycheck. His lead actress was a theater performer who had never been on camera. His cinematographer borrowed equipment from the university where he taught. They shot in real locations: Marco's childhood home, the streets of Manila, a small chapel in Pampanga. The production took 18 months. There were days when they had no budget for food and survived on pan de sal and instant coffee. There were nights when Marco sat alone, staring at his laptop, wondering if Brennan had been right. Maybe Filipino stories didn't matter to the world. Maybe he was just fooling himself. But every time doubt crept in, he remembered the faces of his parents, his Lola, the neighbors who let them film in their homes, people whose stories had never been told on screen with dignity and truth. He kept going. When the film was finally finished, Marco submitted it to dozens of film festivals. Rejection after rejection piled up. Then, one morning, he received an email from the Sundance Film Festival. His heart nearly stopped as he read, "Congratulations, your film has been selected for the World Cinema Dramatic Competition." Sundance changed everything. The film premiered to a sold-out theater. Critics called it a masterpiece of intimate storytelling and a revelatory look at the Filipino diaspora experience. Variety wrote, "Santos has crafted something Hollywood studios wouldn't touch, and in doing so, created something they'll wish they had." Distribution offers came flooding in. A24 picked up the film for North American release. International distributors followed. But Marco wasn't done proving his point yet. He submitted the film to the Academy Awards. To everyone's shock, except perhaps Marco's, it was nominated for Best International Feature Film. But it didn't stop there. The film also received nominations for Best Original Screenplay and Best Picture. A Filipino independent film with a budget smaller than the catering costs of most Hollywood productions was now competing at the highest level. Oscar night arrived. Marco sat in the Dolby Theatre, surrounded by the biggest names in cinema. His parents had flown in from Manila, wearing their finest formal wear, tears already streaming down their faces before any awards were announced. When the Best International Feature category was called, Marco held his breath. The presenter opened the envelope, and the Oscar goes to Marco Santos for Beneath Our Skies. The theater erupted. Marco walked to the stage in a daze. When he reached the microphone, holding the golden statue, he took a moment to compose himself. 5 years ago, Marco began, his voice strong and clear, I sat in a Hollywood office and was told that Filipino stories don't matter, that there's no audience for them, that I should give up. He paused, looking directly into the camera. To every Filipino watching this, to every person whose story has been dismissed, this moment is for you. Our stories matter. They always have. The standing ovation lasted nearly 2 minutes, but Marco wasn't finished. Later that same night, his film was announced as a surprise winner of Best Original Screenplay. When he returned to the stage, he saw something that made his victory even sweeter. In the third row, looking uncomfortable and pale, sat Richard Brennan. The executive who had laughed him out of that conference room was now watching the filmmaker he dismissed win 2 Academy Awards. After the ceremony at the governor's ball, Brennan approached Marco. The executive's smile was tight and forced. "Congratulations," Brennan said, extending his hand. "Quite an achievement." Marco shook his hand firmly. "Thank you. I remember you told me to try YouTube. Turns out the Oscars worked better." Brennan's face reddened. "Look, about that meeting, no need to explain," Marco interrupted. "That meeting was the best thing that ever happened to me. It taught me that when people don't believe in your vision, you find the strength to believe in it yourself. You taught me that rejection is just redirection." Within months, Marco's film became one of the highest-grossing foreign-language films in United States history. It sparked a wave of Filipino filmmakers getting international recognition. Studios that had ignored Filipino stories for decades suddenly wanted Filipino content. Paramount Studios, the same studio where Marco had been rejected, reached out with a 3-picture deal worth millions. Marco took the meeting. This time, they came to Manila. This time, the executives listened to every word. This time, they called him visionary instead of naive. Marco signed the deal, but on his terms: creative control, Filipino crew members, authentic storytelling. Everything they had once said was impossible. Today, Marco Santos is one of the most sought-after filmmakers in the world. His second film premiered at Cannes. His third is in production with a budget that would have seemed like a fantasy in that small Manila apartment. But he never forgot where he started. He established a film fund for aspiring Filipino filmmakers who face the same barriers he did. He mentors young directors who hear the same dismissive words he once heard. And somewhere in Los Angeles, Richard Brennan learned an expensive lesson. Never underestimate the determination of someone with a story to tell. especially when that someone carries the resilience of an entire culture in their heart. The Filipino filmmaker they laughed out of Hollywood didn't just prove them wrong. He changed the industry forever.